by asking you to introduce yourself. Tell us where you were and the years.
Okay. My name is Susan Carpenter Scott. I was Susan Carpenter when I started in June of 1970, and I went to Peace Corps, Afghanistan.
Okay. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Oklahoma City. I was born in Minnesota, but I grew up in Oklahoma City. So,
wasn't out here, was it?
it was on the northeast side of Oklahoma City. It was in Wildwood, Oklahoma.
Okay.
Went to Millwood Elementary School and Northeast High School, and we were one of the first schools to be integrated. Suffered through the white flight to various schools: Edmond, Heritage Hall, Mustang. Let's see where else. Just all over the place. And I graduated from there, and my younger sister graduated from there, but my youngest sister went to McGinnis.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where'd you go to college?
I started out at Cornell College in Mount Vernon, Iowa, and then transferred my junior year to OSU. And the reason I transferred was because all my buddies were going to go to overseas school. They were going to take a year off and go overseas and study. For some reason, I was not interested in that at all. So I transferred home and found a roommate who was also a friend of mine from grade school, and she was transferring back to OSU, so we just hooked up and graduated from OSU in 1970.
What'd you major in?
Art education. And I knew I didn't want to be an art teacher. So I needed to find something else. So
you majored in art education, but that's the one thing you weren't going to do?
My teaching experience, well, first of all, the education classes were not that good. And my student teaching experience was fun, and I enjoyed it, but I didn't have... In the 70s, you were taught, just be free with your art. They didn't teach you any skills. And I was always a pretty good drawer, but I didn't feel comfortable being able to teach kids art. And at that time, I was thinking high school or college. And I thought, well, I am not prepared to do either of those. So I didn't know what I was going to do.
So you graduated, you had that degree, but you didn't have a plan.
Well, before I graduated, I was cashing a check at the student union. And across from the check cashing place was a table that was set up of Peace Corps. So I just sort of approached it, and I said, "What's this about?" And they said, "Well, this is Peace Corps, and we need single females." I thought, "Oh, well, I am."
Yeah.
So let's see. So I filled out the form, and I put down Africa because I was interested in black studies, and South America, because I'd had 4 years of Spanish in high school. And so I thought, well. So then I went on to go to Tulsa to do my student teaching. Didn't think anything of it. And my parents came up to Tulsa with a letter that I had received from Peace Corps. And it said I'd been accepted to Afghanistan. And I said, "Where's that?" I had no idea.
Yeah.
I knew nothing about Afghanistan or Muslim countries or anything. And so I just, okay. And Mother said, "You're going to go, aren't you?" And I thought, "Oh, I guess I am."
They're not playing around here. I'm really going.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I was, a fan of J.F. Kennedy and the fact that he started Peace Corps, and I loved the idea, and I was idealistic. I grew up in a very comfortable environment. My dad was a doctor, and we belonged to Twin Hills Country Club.
Oh, yeah.
And enjoyed, I had a great childhood. Was a cheerleader at both Millwood and Northeast, and so I felt white privilege,
Oh, yeah.
Purity white privilege.
You attained just about everything that somebody in high school wants.
Yeah, I did. But I also experienced what happens when white people leave a situation like that. Because our grocery stores left, and there was nothing that we can go. The closest grocery store was 50th and Chartel, and we lived off of Kelly and 50th. So, just everything disappeared, and houses were up for sale, and so and Spring Lake at that time was where all the kids went.
Right.
And for our senior party, we had a swimming party at Spring Lake. Well, not too long after that, they closed the pool because they didn't want blacks to swim in the pool. So they put dolphins in there and watched all the dolphins die. So I learned a little bit of that. And then when I was at OSU, I was an ugly American because I enrolled late, and they put me in North Drummond where all the foreign students were. And we had, there were food smells I wasn't used to, and you'd go in the bathroom and you wouldn't see any legs on the floor because people were squatting on the toilets like they would in their normal country.
Wow.
So, there was a little prejudice there. I thought, you come here and you da-da-da-da. So they sent me to Afghanistan. That was divine intervention right there.
Is that the way you saw it at the time, or that's the way you see it now?
I think I actually saw it when I was over there because I thought, golly,
No, I mean when you learned that you were going to Afghanistan.
Oh no, not until I experienced Afghanistan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for about 3 or 4 months. We first went to Kabul for our training. Well, first Philadelphia.
Well, tell me about the application. Was it long and involved? Did it take a long time to do? Did it take a long time to be evaluated? All that?
I think it took a long time to be evaluated. I remember several of my friends saying that the FBI came by and interviewed them. I don't remember the form being laborious or anything like that. I just remember that they didn't satisfy my desire to go to the 2 countries I requested. Yeah. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, did you give any thought after you'd been accepted to go to Afghanistan to try to make a deal with them and say, "Hey, I've got all this Spanish, and you're sending me to a place where they don't speak Spanish, and you got lots of countries that do"?
No.
You didn't?
I didn't, primarily because my job description was art and sports in elementary school. And I thought, okay, I can handle that. And, I hadn't had Spanish in 4 years. And black studies, I didn't study that in college, so I was not real well versed in it. So I thought, well, this is closer to what I know as far as career. So no, I didn't question it. Should have, but I didn't.
And where did your group assemble in the United States?
Philadelphia.
Philadelphia, and you were there for a few days?
I think probably about a week.
Okay.
I remember being there for a
About how many were you?
I'm going to say 20, but I ran around with about 10.
And they were from all over, I guess.
All over, yeah.
Yeah. And were you all going to do the same thing? Or did you even know at that point what you were going to do?
The people I hung out with were all going to Afghanistan, but there was only one other person. She was a single woman too, and she and I were going to, I can't remember if we were both teaching art and sports or if she was teaching something else, but we would be roommates wherever we went. And there was another guy that was a silkscreen artist, and he was going to make posters for farmers. There was
that was his assignment?
Yeah. And there were a lot of English teachers.
Uh-huh.
I can't remember if anybody was like in the medical position. I don't think anybody
nurses or anything like that?
I don't think so. There were 3, I remember 3 married couples that went.
Okay.
So
All right, so you were in Philadelphia for a few days. You found out what you were going to teach when you got there.
Yeah.
How did that strike you when you first found out what it was?
Well, to be honest, none of us took it very seriously. None of us took the education about Afghanistan serious at all. You know, they kept saying this is what you're going to experience in a Muslim country. Oh, can't be that bad. You know, and we were all in our 20s. It was 1970s. Lots of things were happening. Liberal, you know, so.
Yeah, LBJ was still president, wasn't he?
Yeah, so we were, you know, we weren't very serious in Philadelphia. And then when we flew over to Afghanistan, there was a Jewish fella on our plane, and he said, "Well, the joke's over." I remember that because when we got off the plane, it was just,
yeah.
that's what those pictures were saying. Nothing, you know, it was just gray, brown gray. So,
You landed in Kabul?
Landed in Kabul.
And how long did you stay there?
I stayed in Kabul?
Yeah.
I think 3 months.
Of training?
3 months of training.
Would you say you experienced culture shock when you got there?
Oh, yes. Yes, I experienced culture shock.
Can you explain that? Can you elaborate on it a little bit?
Well,
what that is?
On the flight over, we stopped at Beirut first, and that was fine. The airport was, you know, it was different, but it was kind of westernized. People were speaking different languages, but also English. Then we stopped in Tehran, and the guys that I was hanging out with, they all went over and got a beer, and so I went up there to get a beer too.
Don't do that.
No,
Women don't do that.
Women don't do that. So that was the first. And then when I got off the plane, the men that were in the airport just looked at us, the females, as sluts. I can't say it any other way. We just looked. And, you know, we had come from, here we we were of the age where we could wear our Birkenstocks, and we were saying this, women don't have to do this, women don't have to do that. And then they go over there, well, women have to do whatever they say.
The men say.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that part was a huge culture shock. But then when we got to our training, you know, it was fine. We had Afghan women training us, and one I really liked, I think her name was Golbadan, and she had gone to the University of Hawaii, and I really liked her. But again, we did not take our training seriously. And I'm no linguist. Like Joe was saying, he was a linguist. No. I did not pick up the language. And they taught me Pashto. Farsi is more of a Romantic language. It kind of follows the rules of the Romantic languages. But Pashto is the native language. And
it was very foreign to you, right?
Oh, gosh.
Pashto.
Yeah. I mean, everything. Vocabulary was very different. And
did the people that you worked with speak Pashto in their homes?
Probably not. They were probably Farsi people, because Pashto was, I equated it at the time to our blacks. You know, they were the lower educated and didn't have the same opportunities as Farsi people. Now, whether that's true or not, that's just how I equated it. So.
Okay. It seems like, well, I'll ask you rather than tell you. What did you think of this women as sort of second class in the country where you were going to be? Did you see this as a challenge, or did you see it as that's just the way it is here? I've got to adapt.
I think at first I was just, you know, puzzled by it. You know, how can this be? How can these women, you know, how can this happen? And and as long as I was in Kabul, I was picking up on the fact that, maybe I better be a little less American, less Western. And so we started wearing dresses over our pants, and I took my hair down, made sure it was. So I lost a lot of my, I don't want to say independence, but my confidence. I became kind of insecure. But when I was in the classes with the Peace Corps people, I acted just like I would here. But out in the streets, I was a little more cautious.
Okay.
And that was in Kabul. So.
Now, your training was what? How would you describe your training? 3 months in Kabul. That says it all.
Yeah, it was not good. I know our teachers got frustrated with us because we were just.
Were your teachers Peace Corps, or were they not?
No, they were mostly natives.
Natives, okay.
Yeah, so that part was good. And we were just partying. We were just having a good time, and really didn't take it very seriously. And because Kabul was sort of it wasn't a Western city, but it wasn't that different, except for some of the Taliban type people. And
did you meet any of them?
On the street, they were always out there.
Yeah.
And
identified as or known as?
No, I would just say they had on costumes of what we know of the Taliban now.
Yeah.
They were certainly traditional Afghan men. And we didn't see a lot of women on the street, except for our Peace Corps ladies and some other Western ladies like doctors and stuff. But I don't mean Western. They dressed like Western. But we saw a lot of chadre, women in chadris, and we had a little house, and we had cooks and.
How many of you were together in that house?
We were in a dorm in Kabul for a while, and then we moved to a house, and I can't remember. I'm going to say there were probably about 10 or 15 of us in the dorm.
Okay.
We played volleyball, and we'd go out to dinner, and we'd do this and do that. And I don't remember the classes being that long. Like 2 hours in the morning and maybe 2 hours in the afternoon. We had a lot of free time.
Oh, that is a lot.
And maybe 3 hours in the morning, but still, I'm going to say max 5 hours of training.
Did you have the weekends off?
I think so. I think we did.
We did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I know we took a field trip out to the country, and they've been telling us, don't drink the water, don't drink the water. Well, here we were at these mountains and this crystal clear stream, and we thought, oh, surely. We all got sick. All of us got dysentery.
Oh, my.
And so... Yeah.
That's how your party ended?
That first time, yeah. Our party continued the whole time, but yeah.
Yeah.
It was...
Well, where was Peace Corps? Were there Peace Corps people around, supervisors, managers?
I'm sure there were. And we, but I think they were partying with us, I think in the evenings they would, invite us to their houses, and we'd have good food, and they'd take us places. We went to, I'm trying to remember, we saw movies. I remember seeing a lot of movies. And we'd go to different Afghans' homes and have really nice meals. But then we took the ones of us who were going to different places like Jalalabad and Lashkargah, which is where I ended up, we took a trip. And I think it was probably in August. And when we got to Lashkargah, it was 120 degrees. And I remember getting up every 3 hours and wetting the sheets so I could just sleep.
Good Lord.
And I thought, I don't want to be here in the summer. So.
You mean, is that the place you were assigned to?
Yeah. Which was another interesting story, because it was a USAID city.
What's that mean? I mean, I know what USAID means.
They
but
were established there, and they had
by USAID?
no. Okay, Lashkargah was there, but USAID moved into Lashkargah to work in a glass factory, and they would be the USAID folks. This is my recollection,
Yeah.
whether it's right or not. They were in management positions, and they employed the Afghans to do the work. And I was kind of upset about that, because I thought, well, they need to be training them in
Yes.
a management position so that they can. But that's not the way it was. And USAID had established this little country club type situation, a little club where you can go get potato chips, and here we're supposed to, as Peace Corps volunteers, we're supposed to adapt to the native culture. So it was sort of this
Push and pull?
Push and pull,
Yeah.
And I wanted to conform to the Afghan culture, but at the same time, I wasn't too crazy about the Afghan culture. And here, this is over here, and it was just a weird situation.
Did you ever have any serious thoughts about going to anybody with USAID and say, look, this is what I see, and give me some feedback on what's going on here, because it doesn't make sense to me?
No, because I was taking advantage of the chips and playing tennis on their courts. And, in my mind, I didn't like it. But at the same time, the other side of my mind was saying, oh, this is comfortable. I'm comfortable here. There was one situation where it was in winter, and we had I can't remember what the name of the stove was called, but we had a stove, and you were supposed to use the camel dung as your fuel to burn it. But it wasn't satisfactory. It just didn't heat our house. And I remember going to the bazaar and buying one of those toasters the old-fashioned toasters.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
We'd use that as a heater. And then finally I saw there was a lady who advertised. She was from USAID, and she advertised a heater. I thought, well, I'd like that. So I went to her house and knocked on the door and said, I'm here to inquire about the heater. And her husband said, well, she decided not to sell it. And I thought at that point, I would, I'd go down to the bazaar and I'd see these heaters on the top shelf, and I'd think, I'm cold, and that heater's just sitting up there. I want it. And I thought, I understood why people stole. Because
you couldn't buy it?
I guess hers was cheaper, and I didn't have enough money to buy one on the bazaar, or maybe I was wasn't comfortable in my skills to go to the shop and say. I don't remember specifics, but I do remember thinking, boy, I understand why people steal. So
because you had the urge yourself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had the urge to take that and heat my house, So that was another lesson that I learned. So white privilege didn't get me that far over there. So
no, I guess not.
Yeah.
So how did the men treat you?
There were some guys.
And I'm not talking about
Native.
Americans. I'm talking about.
Yeah, there were some natives. They were great. They were just super people. I mean, they weren't of the old school. They were trying to make their country
modernize it.
Modernize it. It was. They still had a king. Germany was primarily the backer of Afghanistan at that time, I believe, but Russia was encroaching. So, they were interested in modernizing. Girls were going to school, and I think up to 13. And so it was, the kids were great. I loved the kids. They were happy and big smiles, and all throughout my diary I see, I just love the smiles of these people. So
Were these did the kids come from families that were impoverished or not?
Well, that's the interesting side of my job assignment. So I was sent to Afghanistan to teach art and sports in the Pashto wing. Well, when I get to the Pashto wing, the students are 21-year-old men of Pashto culture. I'm a 22-year-old female. I'm supposed to teach them art and sports.
Mm-hmm.
That was the first time, they were of a family that finally they had enough kids or enough money that they could send their boys to school, but not until they were in their 20s. And so that didn't go over real well. I mean, the students were fine. They tolerated me. I taught them how to throw a football. I can't remember teaching them art, but I think I taught a couple of lessons to them. And in the same building, there was a Farsi wing with true elementary school kids, kindergarten through 5th grade.
Uh-huh.
And eventually I kind of moved over into that area. But again, I didn't have command of that language. I hadn't been taught that language.
Were you supposed to speak in that language?
Yeah.
Teach in that language?
I was supposed to teach in Pashto or Farsi. Yeah. And they had no art supplies. That was the other thing. So it was kind of, okay, what am I going to do here? So
it's hard.
And the other thing that was interesting, there was not much beauty in the country. It was just all brown. I didn't see flowers. I didn't see, not where we were. It was just desert and no birds, no butterflies. I don't remember any of that.
Did you think to yourself, why would anyone live here?
No, I didn't. I mean, that was their country, and they,
I mean, right there where they were in this middle of this desert.
No,
Okay.
no, because there were lush places that you could go within Lashkar, which we didn't do. But they had a tennis court and they had the USAID house. And I found out that my position was actually started by a USAID lady. Her husband worked in the glass factory or was managing it, and she didn't have anything to do, so she started this art and sports program.
Oh, okay.
And so Peace Corps, I guess, thought, well, let's just continue this, make this
latch on to that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how she did it, but
how long did you do that? Did you teach there?
Let's see. I have it in my diary. I would say 3 months at max, and maybe longer, but I would say I didn't go every day. I could find excuses not to go, and
but the students would show up and you wouldn't.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know what happened in that. I'd get there, and I wrote in a couple of times that the headmistress was not happy with me, but they kept working with me. They kept trying to teach me, and I guess there must have been another teacher helping, but they didn't necessarily teach when I was there. They would just be in the background or something.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember enough about that.
You don't remember if they were observers who would talk to you and suggest things that you could do or should do?
I don't remember them as suggesting anything. They could have been observers. But see, if I was there for a total of 9 months, and I had 3 months in Kabul, that makes 6 months left. Probably had 2 or 3 in the Pashto wing, which I was floundering.
When you call it wing, what do you mean by Pashto wing?
Well, the building was actually...
Oh, wing of a building.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, it was actually a wing of a building.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And you had 3 months there.
3 months with the men, the 21-year-old men, and then probably about 3 months with the younger kids, because I had 3 months in Kabul.
Were there other Peace Corps volunteers teaching there also?
No.
Anywhere near there?
Serenity was somewhere. That was my roommate. But I don't remember her going to that school with me. She must have been in another school. There were only 3 of us in Lashkar. And Doug was the silkscreen artist, and his assignment was to make posters for farmers, and the posters were to advertise DDT, which had been outlawed in America, I think, in the 50s.
Yeah, something like that. I think that's right.
So we were getting a little disillusioned, with our government and the assignment. All of us.
All of you.
All of us in Lashkar.
And when you say all, you mean 3?
All 3 of us.
Yeah.
But then also my boyfriend was in Jalalabad, and he wasn't having a great experience either. But again, like I said, we weren't that terribly serious.
Mm-hmm.
We had all it was a lark. But
well, I'm just wondering if there was a Peace Corps director or any management around there that you could have gone to.
Not in Lashkar. I remember them visiting maybe twice while we were there, and just for like a day.
What'd you tell them when they came? Sounds like you had plenty to tell them if you wanted to.
I probably said that it's not going well.
Mm-hmm.
And this last time they came, I wasn't prepared for them to take me away from Lashkar, which they did.
Who did? Peace Corps?
Peace Corps.
Uh-huh.
But I wasn't sorry that they took me away from Lashkar.
Why did they take you away? Because you were complaining?
No, probably because I hadn't been doing my job.
Oh.
Probably the school had, and well, there were a lot of drugs, and I had partook. I don't know if that's the right word. I tried hashish,
mm-hmm.
and they might have got whiff of that because they'd already sent several Peace Corps volunteers home because they were kind of dealing in it.
Dealing in hashish? The Peace Corps volunteers were?
There was one.
Good Lord.
One. Yeah. It was prevalent. And now the society certainly didn't support that, but there was lots and lots and lots of hashish.
Mm-hmm.
And
you mean like you go out and there'd be a guy on the street corner who...
I was never approached or anything like that, but the Peace Corps volunteers certainly knew how to get what they needed.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a big problem. And
that's a hallucinogen, right?
Yeah, and it was laced, it's marijuana laced in opium is what it is.
Oh, is that right?
So it is, yeah. And so towards the end of my experience, I was getting paranoid about lots of things. So I would just stay home. I wouldn't go. Well, when I would venture out, you'd hear people say, I wonder if she eats food. Like you're an alien.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
it was just, what's she doing? Wearing regular clothes. Why is she taking those puppies home? Because
mm-hmm.
there were, they treated the dogs horribly. They just stoned them. And so we adopted several dogs and took care of them. And Serenity was less of a, she didn't go to school a lot. She stayed home.
What would she do? What would you do when you didn't go to school?
Probably just
hang out.
Yeah, hang out. In my diary, I talk about decorating my room a lot. Just making it comfortable,
mm-hmm.
just having a safe place to go. And there's plenty. I mean, you have to wash the rice, get all the little stones out of the rice, and get the vegetable of the season, figure out another way to cook the eggplant, the only vegetable you have for those 2 months,
Mm-hmm.
So it was a way to idle. I learned how to knit. I did a lot of arts and crafts, did a lot of paintings, so I just...
Did you do this with any of the nationals?
With the kids, We did do a lot of art. I don't know how, they had crayons, and I remember doing a lot of lessons with crayons and probably saying, take crayon and color. That's probably the best I could speak in that language. But I had good experience with the kids when I was there and felt comfortable teaching.
So you felt like they knew enough English so that you could carry on conversations with them?
Well, when I said I was take crayon and no, I was speaking in Pashto, but it sounded probably like take crayon and color. Just like, when you hear foreign people just learning English over here, they, have their sentence structure's not good and
right.
they have the wrong vocabulary. I'm sure that's what I sounded like.
So, did you have any Afghani friends who could speak English well enough to where you really were friends and could carry on good conversations about whatever was going on in your lives?
We probably did. I remember playing tennis a couple of times, and I know that there were some Afghans that we played tennis with, but we didn't get to do that very often. And single women, we were not as approachable as, say, a married couple or guys. So I know that some of the Peace Corps guys made friends with a lot of the Afghan men, but the Afghan women weren't free to socialize that much.
Well, I would have thought that single, white, attractive female over there is target number one for the men. No? No, they would. You would not see women out and about. They would be home, cooking, taking care of the kids, and when they did leave the house, they would have their chadri on. Now, if we were in the bazaar, we'd get pinched, but as far as being attractive, as far as a relationship, that's out.
That is out. I mean, from my standpoint, that was out. That's probably why I clung to the Peace Corps guys so much, because I felt safe with them. And one experience that we had, we did take a vacation to Peshawar, I don't know how to say it, Pakistan. And we took a train to the border, and then we were going to have a lorry or something take us over the border. And we were stopped at the border by some mujahideen. Mujahideen. And we were there probably for 2 hours. And the only reason I think that we made it out alive was because we spoke Pashto. And of course, I was not doing any speaking because I was a woman. But the guys were able to convince them to let us go on. And after that, there were no more women. There was one more group of married couples that came after our group left. But after that, no more women were sent to Afghanistan. So I think they stopped sending Peace Corps volunteers in '79.
In '79 to Afghanistan. And there have been none since, as far as you know?
As far as I know.
Okay. Well, so it was sort of was it an experiment, or was it more of ignorance that they just sent?
I think it was very political. And in what way, I'm not real sure. But, I really don't know. Because most of the assignments were not well thought out. Now, in Joe's case, or people sent to Africa, a lot of times they did send medical personnel or people that could help with situations over there. Let's make water, readily accessible. But I didn't see any construction or anything like that in Afghanistan.
Yeah, in Africa and South America, some places that I've talked to RPCVs about, they were assigned to help the people establish a business, if they could, and even if it was just growing vegetables.
Yeah.
Was there any need for that there, or were the people doing well enough that they didn't?
That I don't know. Obviously, they were advertising the DDT to help with the crops, but that was just an art assignment. That wasn't actually physically showing them how to do it. I do know that most of the vegetables and fruits over there were absolutely delicious, but you had to soak them in iodine. You could not eat anything, even if it had a rind on it. You had to prepare it special. So,
what would happen if you didn't? You get
real
dysentery.
Sick. Yeah, because they would water their fields with their own urine, and just it was very primitive, but they had really, really good food, but they knew how to prepare it. Mm-hmm. I didn't. You go down to the bazaar and you see a lamb hanging down there with all the flies on it. Well, I wasn't going to eat that.
No.
So we went to Nixon's Bazaar and got cheese, in a can. But eggs and vegetables and fruits, and that was it. So
it doesn't sound like you got much help from Peace Corps on what to eat and how to live.
No, I would say we did not.
Yeah.
We did not.
Was it because they were kind of hands off?
Well, we didn't have anybody. If we had any, we probably did have a couple of volunteers that were in Lashkargah that were officials. But the only time I remember meeting with one of them was we had no way of washing ourselves in our house except just through a faucet and no hot water unless we heated it. So I do remember one time I got to have a shower or a bath at her house, and maybe they said, well, call us anytime or whatever, and maybe we were not comfortable enough doing that.
Yeah.
I'm self-sufficient or whatever, or I'm not going to add. I don't know, but I don't remember a whole lot of help at all.
Mm-hmm.
So, we were left on our own. Like Joe said, he had that mentor with him that was fabulous. And I thought, well, that's kind of nice.
That would have been great.
Yeah, especially as a single female in that country.
Did you ever feel in danger?
Just when we went to the border and on the way to Pakistan.
And why were you made to feel threatened there? What happened? What did they do that scared you?
They kept looking at us, the females, and they had these big bullet things on. They're armed.
Are these guys border guards?
I think they were probably border guards.
All right.
Yeah, and they didn't want us to go into. I don't know if they were Pakistani border guards or Afghanistan.
Uh-huh.
But because we were there for so long, and the Peace Corps guys said, just go back to the bus. Get on the bus, get out of sight. And
so you wanted to cross into Pakistan, but they were not going to let you?
They didn't want to let us, but the boys convinced them, because they spoke Pashto, that we were okay, that we were not going to do whatever we were not going to do. I don't know.
Yeah.
And I do know, and the reason I probably have that feeling of being in danger is because the next Peace Corps group that went there, the females, they were raped in front of their husbands.
Peace Corps volunteers were?
Mm-hmm. That's what I had heard, that they were raped in front of their husbands. So
when did this happen?
The the next
After you?
Yeah, after I left, the next group that came in, that was the last group of females that they sent, and they were all married. So,
And so Afghanis came and raped the females in a systematic way, or just when
that
they
I
felt
don't
like
know.
it?
That I don't know. This is just all rumor because I don't have.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, I don't remember where I even heard that, but yeah.
But at this time, you were not afraid to be in Afghanistan the way somebody would several years later, when Afghanistan became the home of the Taliban and woo.
Right. There was enough scary moments, when we had the traditional men would look at us like we were not human, and the kids would say, "Do they eat?" There were enough insinuations that we were an anomaly. We just, didn't belong there. That I felt uncomfortable there. So,
And there was no way that you could make a case for yourself because linguistically you couldn't do it.
Linguistically, I couldn't, defend myself at all, and there wasn't any place to actually go to say, "Look, I can't handle this. I need help, or I need to go, or something."
There wasn't any place, meaning you didn't feel like you could go to Peace Corps management or whatever they call themselves and say, "Let me lay this out for you."
Yeah, no, that doesn't mean that it wasn't there. That doesn't mean that that system was not set up for me to have help. That just means that I don't remember that there was that help, or I didn't seek it, or I was too hung up in what I was doing. Had this boyfriend and I didn't want to leave, but I really wanted to leave. So.
And your boyfriend was how far away?
He was in Jalalabad, so that was probably about 5 hours at least. Yeah.
How often did you see one another?
Probably every 2 months. Yeah.
How would you get from your place to Jalalabad?
Well, we'd have to wait for a reason to go to Kabul, because I guess there would be transportation through Peace Corps to go to Kabul every once in a while. And of course, he would have to have the same situation where he'd end up. I do remember going to Jalalabad once, and he came, I think, a couple of times to Lashkargah.
Did you introduce him around when he came?
Yeah. We all the Peace Corps people and some Afghans would get together and have a good time.
The Afghans who got together with you, what were they? Who were they?
They were
Teachers?
probably teachers at the school where I was, and where Doug was the other volunteer there, and he had friends too in his community, little community that he was dealing with. And I think there might have been a married couple there, and of course they had their friends that were not the same as ours. So we probably had a little bit of a group that would get together occasionally. My notes in my diary are horrible, so
What do you mean they're horrible?
well, they're just all over the place. A lot of self-doubt, and what am I doing? What am I supposed to teach tomorrow? Da, da, da,
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Well, you could call them introspective.
Well, they're very introspective, very self. Yeah.
So did your boyfriend and you kind of egg one another along about maybe leaving?
Probably, yeah. A couple of times I wrote that I would love to stay here in Lashkargah and get into this teaching position. So I do think I liked what I was doing. I just felt ill prepared because I didn't have the materials, and I didn't really, there was no curriculum. There was no, and I certainly didn't feel comfortable writing a curriculum for the Afghan people. You know, I had to test them. I remember I had to test the boys in sports, and so I came up with something, or I think some of the Afghan teachers helped me with that, but I still had to do the grading, and I had to come up with a test for the elementary school kids, and I had them draw something. I remember coming up with lesson plan. One lesson plan was draw a picture of your house, you know, and so I got some great little pictures of that, and I wanted to set up a vase of flowers all the flowers. So I had to.
There were no
flowers.
flowers.
No butterflies. There were no birds. So okay, what can we do? So yeah.
Okay. So at what point were you finally starting to think, this isn't what I wanted, this isn't what I'd hoped for? I don't see a way out.
My mother sent me a care package. And in the care package, she had made 3 tunics. One had all the fabric that she had made curtains out of. She'd made dresses for my sisters, dresses for me. So that was homesick big time. She sent not a CD, a tape of the Carpenters.
Oh, yeah.
And singing, so that was another thing. And some snacks, I can't remember what they were. And that was it. You know, I thought, I gotta go home. This is not for me. So
did you tell your mother later on that she couldn't have done a better job of luring you away with that care package than she did?
Yeah. The only sad thing about that, though, is she was looking so forward to meeting us in Europe. I was going to fly to Europe, and they were going to meet me over there and have this great vacation. Well, instead, I was shipped home to Washington, D.C. So, which was good. I really was going. I was not healthy mentally at all by the time I left.
How about physically?
Physically, probably not great, because I didn't have a super diet, you know. A lot of starch and a lot of potatoes and not potatoes, whatever they had, rice, a lot of rice. I remember the last week that I was there, I buried the hashish pipe, I quit eating, I quit drinking, and I was not good. Because
you were not good physically, and you
not good mentally, I think.
And you just didn't want it.
I don't know what I remember I went to the Genghis Khan had a summer home there, the ruins of a summer home, and I remember being there and looking over the cliff and thinking, I wonder what it'd be like to jump. Now, I wasn't contemplating suicide, but it was that, I wonder, you know?
Yeah.
And then on the way home, I took off my coat and I gave it to the lorry driver, and I said some negative things to him. I don't know if they were swearing or if it even made any sense to him, but basically I was saying, give this to your wife, you creep, you know. I was just ready to get out of there. So I was done. And it was a sad thing because I really probably could have enjoyed working with the kids and teaching them something that was valuable.
If it was valuable.
If it was valuable.
Rather than what it was.
Yeah. And it could have been. I mean, art is a universal language. And if I just had better, if I'd been better prepared, I'm just going to say that. I'm not going to blame it on Peace Corps, but I was not in the right frame of mind and didn't know what I was getting myself into.
And so you got yourself into a predicament that you couldn't see a way out of except one way.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sure you must have talked over this decision that you were in the process of making with other Peace Corps volunteers,
Well,
the ones around you there.
my roommate and I at that point weren't getting along very well. So I think she had been
No.
talking about going home too. And so I thought maybe I can just outlast her. Maybe she'll go home first.
And things will get better.
Things will get better. And that didn't happen. But we were in that state, and at the time I really wasn't thinking about going home. But we were in that state of thinking when some Peace Corps officials came down to Lashkar, and at that point I probably said I want to go home, and I did say that. I said I want to go home, and by saying that I meant I want to go back to Kabul.
You meant you want to go to Kabul.
Kabul, because then that way my boyfriend is closer and blah, blah, blah. But I went home. They sent me home, which was fine. In retrospect, it was the right thing to do.
Okay, but you said you wanted to go to Kabul, not
No,
go
no,
home.
no. I said I wanted to go home, thinking in my mind that's Kabul.
So this was a misunderstanding then?
Kind of, probably. But I was not sorry. I was not sorry.
Yeah, it was okay as things
Yeah.
turned out.
Because when I got to Kabul, I stayed with a doctor and his wife and his family. And when I got there, I had on that chemise my mother had made me. I mean that tunic. I had that on, and they had a tub. I said, "Well, may I take a bath?" And they said yes. So I took a bath, put that tunic back on. I took 5 baths that day because I had not had,
Yeah, this is luxury. I haven't experienced.
And I have had a bath every day since. So, yeah, it was. You ask about culture shock. It was harder for me to come back to America and live in this culture than it was over there.
I understand.
Because they were sensible. They didn't waste water. They had their fruits and vegetables all figured out, and they ate them lots of different ways. They didn't waste anything.
Mm-hmm.
They made do. And I thought, when you come back and it's hard. So.
Mm-hmm. Did it hit you right away, or did it gradually set in?
I think it probably gradually set in, because when I came home, I came back to my parents' house, and that was familiar. So, and my mother had always been, she was conscious. She was very, she didn't waste anything. So she was conscious of the right way to live.
Mm-hmm.
But she also lived, she was a doctor's wife, so.
Yeah, lived very well.
Yeah, lived very well.
Yeah.
But.
Well, that's really interesting to me. That you got so little help, even after you expressed that you needed some help to Peace Corps. It seemed like they were kind of.
Well, I'm not sure if I ever expressed it. How did you think that I expressed it?
Oh, I think you talked to a couple of them, you said, and that you told them what you were doing and that it didn't make a lot of sense.
I probably was talking to mostly the teachers, the Afghan teachers in my school, saying, and probably wasn't aware of enough of what I needed to really express, because I'd only done my student teaching, and my student teaching experience and my education classes were not satisfactory. So eventually I did become a teacher. I taught for 40 years and loved it. So
afterwards,
after I came back,
yeah.
And now I know, if I needed more experience before that should have been, I needed more experience before they sent me to a foreign Muslim country for crying.
I think you're a little hard on yourself, really, Sue, because I didn't have any experience either. I didn't know how to do anything.
What was your assignment?
Teach modern math to math teachers.
Oh, wow.
It was absurd. But I did it for 6 or 7 months.
And they were probably very appreciative.
No, they weren't. They thought
they
it was stupid. They didn't like modern math. They liked the old math.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so we agreed with one another. Why are they doing this?
Okay.
And they thought at first that I had been hired to shove it down their throats.
Oh.
And they were resisting.
Yeah.
But still not being rude to me or
Right.
mean to me.
Right. The
accepting.
Afghan people were fabulous.
Yeah.
The people I worked with, they were absolutely fabulous. And I really did not want to leave them. But it was...
Well, what I did, though, was I went into Manila one day to my regional representative who oversaw Peace Corps in a geographic area. And I said, I don't like this. This is not to my liking at all. And he said, well, what would you like to do? I said, I don't know, but let's look around. Can you help?
Okay.
And he said, yes, I will help. So he found me a job in an isolated little mining community as a teacher, just a general teacher. And that was the dream assignment.
Oh,
It
wow.
was fantastic.
Okay.
I became a citizen of that town and
Oh, wow.
loved it. Absolutely loved
Did you re-enlist?
it. No, I didn't because, well, I can't remember exactly why I didn't. Oh, yeah, I did. I proposed to a girl, and she said no.
Oh, yeah. Love gets in the way, it really does.
Yeah. She said, I really like you, but no, I'm not going to live in the U.S.
Ah.
I said, that sounded pretty emphatic. She said, it is. It is. I'm just not going to do that.
Was she Filipino?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we're going to get married and raise kids, it's going to be right here.
Okay.
Can you do that? No, I don't think so.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. So at the end of my 2 years, I took off.
You were out. Yeah.
Yeah. But that girl and I are still Facebook friends, and we talk all the time.
Oh, that's
way. Yes,
cool.
that's right.
That is cool. Yeah. Yeah.
So when did you get back to the U.S.?
I believe it was February of 71.
February of 71.
Yeah.
All right. And let's see, what did you do right away? You went to your parents' house, right?
I went to my parents' house and I enrolled at UCO and I took some commercial art classes because I thought, okay, well I can do that. And then, well, actually, before I did that, I had some college friends and they were going to Chicago to live for a while. And so I said, well, I'd like to go do that with you. So it took me a while to find a job. I finally had to lie and say, yes, I would love to work in the insurance company for the rest of my life. And so I had a job there for about 3 years. And that was really a good transition for me. One thing before, first when I came back from Peace Corps, they took me to Washington, D.C. for debriefing.
Mm-hmm.
And they sent me to they said, I think you need to see a psychiatrist.
Sent you to a psychiatrist?
Yeah, and I said, okay. So they sent me to this male psychiatrist. I said, there's no way I'm going to talk to a man. I was fed up, with the male culture from Peace Corps. And,
uh-huh.
and also, I forgot to mention this, when they were driving me from Lashkargah to Kabul, an Afghan driver was driving. I was in the middle seat and there was somebody over here. And I grabbed the steering wheel. I was not going to let that man drive me. Somebody intervened and we made it, but it was
good thing.
I was just from going from a bra-burning liberal woman to a Muslim country and then just getting shut down in every possible way a woman can get shut down, and then coming back was that was a hard adjustment.
That's whiplash, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
It is, and it affected my decisions for the next 5 years, I think.
Wow.
So yeah, it was. But I did find I got a good teaching job, and then I went to another teaching job. So that part was. They didn't destroy that part.
After you got back, did you ever tell Americans about your experience in the Peace Corps? Did they, they might find out, oh, she was in the Peace Corps. Let me ask her.
Oh, I've always bragged that I was in Peace Corps. and I did. I learned some extremely valuable lessons.
What, for example?
For example, that you got to walk in somebody else's shoes before you ever. You can't be prejudiced against another person without knowing where they're coming from. That was a big one. Second one was, don't spend all your money on a Persian rug the first month because you need food to eat. I always had.
Is that what you did?
It is. It's exactly what I did. And let's see what else.
How did you think you were going to get along when you didn't have any money? Did you think people would support you?
Well, I had some money. I mean, that's why I had to buy the canned cheese on the Nixon Bazaar, because I couldn't afford to buy better stuff.
But you put it a different way. You said it was because there were maggots all over that meat. I'm not going to eat that.
That's true. I wasn't going to eat that. But and we also had to buy the cheaper rice. I had to pick the stones out. They had different kinds of rice.
Oh, I see.
So I just had to. I couldn't buy what I wanted to buy. So because I already bought what I wanted.
Well, now your parents were well off. Didn't they send you money?
They did. They sent me when we were going to go to Pakistan. They wired some money to me, and however, I think that was stolen from us. I saw that in mine. So I think they wired me some more. It was like $50 was taken. So that was a lot of money.
How was it, and when was it taken?
I was in Kabul, and they stole my purse.
Did they break into your room, or?
No, I think I was in the bazaar. It was a pickpocket type thing.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
You got $50?
Yeah,
that was a lot of money. A lot of money.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you'd like to tell me that you thought of before I came today that you wanted to include that you haven't so far?
Well, just that I still believe in the premise of Peace Corps. And I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. I think diplomatically it can be a really good solution to not sending the ugly American tourists over there. You have people who are really interested in learning different cultures and contributing to their success. So that part I really like. And the other thing that I learned over there, even though I could not make a difference in Peace Corps Afghanistan, it taught me that I needed to make a difference in the world,
Boy, there's a big one.
Yeah. So while I was over there, I left America because I was not happy with it. We had the Vietnam War, all of that, the civil rights, horrible what we were doing to our own people. And but when I was over there, I hand sewed an American flag because I thought, as ugly as it is, it's my home, and I need to go home and make a difference.
I think that's a great way to end.
Good.